I have a question for all the marine engineers in the room. I request the master mariners not to answer. I would like you to tell me, fellow engineers, what's in this magic box? What do you think this is?
Oh, that is embarrassing.
KET, enlighten us.
Sextant?
Let's see what it is. It is indeed a sextant.
Sextant. That's why it's embarrassing.
Now you ask who can use it.
But Paul earlier asked me, is this for sale? And it actually was, Paul. And I said, I'll tell you the story now. I'll tell it to everybody. So when let me go back once. Let's move to the next slide and come back to the story. This is my father's sextant.
Wow.
It was purchased in 1962 in Hull, and it cost him a princely sum of 52.5 pounds.
Oh, for big cookers, huh?
So one day I was on holiday in India, that's where he lives, and he said, get rid of this son. So I said, okay, I'll bring it back to Dubai. I called the Gulf News, that's our newspaper here, also known as Good News. Okay, that's a different story. I called the guy and I said, I have a sextant for sale. And the other guy, obviously non-mariner on the phone, said, we don't sell these kind of things in Dubai, sir. True story. I read this interesting article in the latest Marine Professional, that's the Institute's magazine. And it's to do with Yara, which is a Norwegian chemical company, has entered into an agreement with Kalmar. Kalmar manufactures cargo handling equipment, especially for containers. Captain Bagheri will be happy to know. And this agreement, they've actually produced, their scope is in the red. They've produced this cargo handling equipment fully automized, hands-free, no human intervention. So this equipment can load and discharge the vessel without any human intervention. Now, last year, Yara had an agreement with Kongsberg, and they designed, and it's in production right now, a fully autonomous electrical container ship, which is the Yara Birkeland. So this is the age we're into it. This vessel comes alongside by itself again, no tugs, no pilot, nobody, alongside by itself, loads, does its journey, and comes back fully automized. Absolutely amazing.
How does the harbour master issue a direction?
Those kind of questions will be answered in their presentation. But to do all that, you need a lot of obviously modern equipment, state-of-the-art equipment, and the ECDIS, the electronic chart display and information systems, forms a very important part of a ship's navigation equipment. And so much so that the ECDIS has become compulsory, mandatory by SOLAS on all vessels, the last one being cargo ships between 10,000 and 20,000 gross tons. The rule, the regulation came into effect in July of this year, and they need to install it before the first periodical survey after July 2018. This is the agenda for this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I will soon introduce Emma and Paul. We'll have a session running for an hour. We'll have a break then, a bit unusual for what we normally do, but hey, there's a first time for everything. We'll have a 15-minute coffee break, and that will be followed by another 1-hour session. Of course, we'll have a vote of thanks and our world-famous raffle draw thereafter. ChartWorld has been kind enough to invite us all for dinner, so please stay back once this is over. We'll have some nice canapes and have a few laughs over some drinks. Today's session is being recorded by Sailor Today. We have Umesh and Alison here, all the way from India, and they are recording this live. It's being beamed live, so don't look at your phones, but let me tell you that it's being shot live. as well as, it's not live, but we have the Salesh here from shooting it on the IMarEST TV. So this is recorded, the IMarEST TV, the video is only for IMarEST members. This will be sent to London and edited, and then it will be uploaded on our website. So please put on your best smiles, and the camera is facing you. I will now introduce Emma, who is the sales director for ChartWorld International. Emma is a marine cartographer. Anybody knows what's a cartographer? There you go. Charts. She's a marine cartographer by trade and has worked in the industry for 14 years, previously at the United Kingdom Hydrographic Office and at ChartWorld in Singapore for the last 6 years. After several years compiling BA paper charts and scheming of the AVCS service, Emma joined ChartWorld to focus on the ECDIS and digital navigation sector of the industry, and has now relocated to Hamburg to focus on the European and Middle East markets.
And I'm an IMarEST member.
And she's an IMarEST member. Very good. Salesh, can you? Oh, and there's Captain Paul Hillwood. Paul established Hillwood Consultancy in 2000, following 21 years at sea, including 4 years as master. He specializes in assisting shipping companies with the development and implementation of practical and efficient bridge procedures following the adoption of digital navigation systems, including ECDIS. Paul has worked with many prestigious new build ships and shipping companies, including Carnival Corporation, Royal Fleet Auxiliary, and numerous other commercial tanker and dry cargo companies. In addition to this work, he conducts insurance surveys for Lloyd's of London underwriters, external navigation audits, and expert witness for navigation-related instruments. Paul and Emma, welcome to the IMarEST meeting, and welcome to Dubai. I now hand over the con to you.
Thank you.
Oh, we're not sure who's got the con now. We've got two of us. That's blown that already. You have the con.
Before we start, thank you all for coming, and thank you to IMarEST for supporting us with this event. A bit of background on why this is 2 hours long. We will try not to bore you too much. We want you all to be participants in what we're talking about, share experiences, ask questions. Paul is here to talk about this from the perspective of an auditor and from a risk side of things, and I'm here to talk about how we at ChartWorld are solving some of these issues and what we're doing beyond ECDIS. Everyone knows what ECDIS is, everyone's been dealing with it for some time, digital data. We're now talking about the next stage and what happens afterwards. In Hamburg 4 years ago, we started an event called World ECDIS Day. It was pretty well attended, a few hundred people from industry experts, and we had a panel discussion. Paul was involved also around ECDIS at the time, so it was 4 years ago, right at the at the height of the mandation period. And then again 2 years ago we did another session, and because of the feedback we had, we decided to take it on tour. So this is number 12 of 12. We started off in Asia last November, went through India to Europe, and now back to Dubai. So as I say, we've done 11 others, so this is our last one, and we're pleased to be able to do it in Dubai and share it with the IMarEST. So without further ado, we shall start, and we will work through our lovely bridge that we have here, and Paul will start taking you around some of the topics.
Oh, well, thank you, Emma. And thank you again thank you for the introduction there. As Emma said, my sort of view is that much more of the practical mariner, and I hope you're okay with my English. English is not my first language, being born in Liverpool. So if sometimes it gets a little bit excited, then give me a shout, and away we go. And in fact, mentioning Hull, that's a good example there of the wonderful English language and what we need to learn of communications. That one of the last trips I did coming to Immingham, the VTS there told me to anchor near Whitburn Wood. If anyone's been there, Whitburn Wood. And we're all running around on the chart trying to find Whitburn Wood. And I kept asking him, well, where's that? Anchor near Whitburn Wood. On the chart, it's Whitebourne Roads. Okay. I said, Whitebourne Roads? Yeah, Whitburn Wood. What's wrong with you? Oh, okay. So we can see how, hopefully, digitisation can help us a little bit more as we move through that. So as Emma said, what I'm really looking at is what would I be looking at as an external navigation auditor for whoever on board ships, and how can we see that digital navigation above and beyond just ECDIS can actually move forward with that. And I always sort of start really, particularly in an audience like this, it's very easy to make technological advantages and all these wonderful things we can make on board ships. But really the key question is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? And I always like to ask that question when people present to a shipping company. Oh, look at this, it makes toast, it does coffee, it can do this here. But what is the problem you're trying to solve here? Oh, I don't know, but look how clever it is. No, we actually got to focus on what is it we're looking at. And if I were to look at digital systems, then right at the top, it's situational awareness. Now I would say, okay, so we're going to now invest in a system on board the ship, digital system, ECDIS, or whatever system we're looking at. How does that improve situational awareness? If it makes it worse, that's not so good. But if it makes it better, that's great. Because our number one issue at sea is situational awareness. Most of the incidents are because we didn't see that. I wasn't sure that was there. I didn't see that. I wasn't know how shallow the water was or whatever. So this is where we really need to focus in. And I often say, well, if I'm on the bridge of a ship and I'm then looking at the bridge team and how that team's working with all the resources which have been provided by the owner, how well are they working to improve that situational awareness? Actually, it's a pretty easy job. If you're looking at, say, coming to Port of Southampton on a cruise ship, really all I'm looking at is, are they spending more time looking out the window than faffing about on little bits of machines down here? And if they're spending more time doing this, then they've got it wrong. Procedures, training, equipment are wrong. If they're spending more time focusing out the window, backing up the pilot, then life is good. And the areas which we really need to look at, well, we know with ECDIS, we've seen that, we're pretty familiar now with ECDIS, that is going to improve our real-time monitoring of the ship's position. Before, it was a very simple thing. You could see how quickly you could do it. Before, if you weren't sure, is that number 2 buoy or is that number 4 buoy? I'm not really sure. Second officer, can you just put a fix on the chart and come back? And you're standing there, very, come on, all right, I really need to know, because am I supposed to alter a course or not? But now, a master, or if I got the card of the vessel, I can look at this, I can say, yeah, that's number 2 buoy. So very quickly I can get that. Provided I'm confident and I know what I'm looking at. Provided I fully understand the accuracy of the system and all the rest of it. But this is really the 3 areas which I think digital systems need to focus on. Is that the 3 levels, as I'm sure you're aware, of situational awareness. Now if we have a system which just works on perception, so I look out the window, I can see that vessel, and showing me a green light on my starboard side, then immediately, okay, I get a perception, I get an idea, well, I better do something about this straight away. Most incidents occur because I act on perception. Oh, quick, slow down, go to starboard, whatever, oh, I didn't see that ship. That's where most accidents happen. Now, if I have a good system there, then that's going to allow me to have full comprehension. So I'm now, okay, I can see that green light, starboard side, understand that, need to do something about it. Right, this is now telling me the true vector, I can see that, I can see where the CPA is, I can see this other ship behind me. I'm comprehending the system. Okay, I haven't knee-jerk reaction. I've got information really quick, much quicker than that second officer putting a fix on the chart telling me, great, I'm getting this information. So now I've moved much safer. And where I think we need to move to is that then the projection. And that's really where these systems should help us. They should quickly say, well, if you do this, this is what will happen. So it should be a much more advanced way of using the trial maneuver concept. Okay, what I intend to do now is slow down, let this ship come ahead. Yeah, if you do that, that's fine. This other ship should pass clear, or whatever depth of water, or my drift angle is going to increase too much. All these things should be able to come because it's basic data, digital information which should come together. If I go through those 3 steps, quick, easy, straightforward and accurately, I'm a much safer person, much safer operation, bridge team. So those are the areas which I'm looking at in the round, and it's really over to Emma to say how you do that in your fine systems.
We have a couple of our ECDIS systems outside in the coffee break area. Please have a chance to have a look at them later. For those of you that don't know, ChartWorld have been around for 27 years, I guess, but on the ECDIS side of things, mostly for the last 8 years, under our own brand name. We have a sister company called 7Cs, who many of you probably will have heard of, who sit on all the IHO working groups, who are part of the teams that are making these standards, and have developed ECDIS for many other people, ECDIS kernels, many defence agencies for a long time. So about 8 years ago, we wanted to take that experience and put it into our own brand and tackle the retrofit market. So we don't do so many new builds, but we do for some owners, but we wanted to put our business model that suited the retrofit market, with ships going through this mandation, being bought and sold, and integrating with the existing bridges, with the aim of improving situational awareness by developing a software in conjunction with some German pilots, with a selection of master mariners, to make it a lot easier to use, so you are not delving into menu structures. The idea is that as more and more data comes onto these ECDIS systems and integrates with other autonomous vehicles that are happening on the bridge, this is where having a system which is easy to use is quite important. So for example, on a paper chart, you will not have the efficiencies that you gain in situational awareness like you do with an ECDIS. So if we go to look at one here, we have a drilling vessel, and if we click into it, that's what you should see when you look out the window. And again, if we go to look at 2, Peter Pan is our test vessel that we have in Hamburg, and she tests all our equipment for us. If we look on the ECDIS, you can see Peter Pan there, and again, if you look out the window, that's where she is on your port side. So all of this information should be very easy to spot in the ECDIS and very easy to transfer to reality. And that is the point of any bridge equipment, especially going forward into this autonomous age that everybody's now talking about.
And Emma, that ship Peter Pan, where is she registered?
Where is she registered?
Yes. Please tell me it's
Netherlands.
The Netherlands.
Bad joke.
No, not true. I did like that. So if we get, that's the general aim of what we're looking at when we go on board this ship. How do we get situational awareness improvement with that as a system? If we get it wrong, and we get the wrong stuff, we haven't got proper training, then we take the situational awareness gets worse. I often say that with these systems, these type of systems, a good digital system on board the ship will make a good navigator more efficient and safer, but they will make a bad navigator even worse. You cannot supplement bad navigation by these systems. You can only improve efficiency of that system. So if you've got a bad navigation, that's not going to work. And a lot of that relies on where are we integrating, not just as an integrated bridge system, but what is integrated into those digital systems. So if I go on board a vessel now, I start looking around the bridge and say, well, what systems do we have here on this bridge, and how do they integrate, how do they communicate, how do they work? And you see that 1,000 times. Every time you go on the bridge of a ship now, or tanker or whatever else, then the lovely chart table, you have the curtains which you can open and look behind, it's just a whole rack of screens and computers, and this one's for immigration, and this one's for MARPOL, and this one's for this, and you've got 6, 7 different computers, not talking, replicating, doing this difficult. Amazing. So what is it really we should be looking at? And that's a key word I'll keep coming back to, an efficient bridge. Does the bridge work efficiently? I'm a great believer that most navigators, in fact all navigators, when they go on watch, 12 to 4, they do not go up there to run the ship aground. They don't say, tonight's tonight. I'm going to ram it in that pier. They want to do a good job. They want to finish their 4 hours and go back to their bunk and back to their cabin and say, I've done a good job, I can get on with the job. The problem comes if we have an inefficient bridge, and suddenly that second officer has got inefficient systems, then that compromises safety because they're busy doing everything else. If you're suddenly there, again, you must have seen it many times, you're about to sail, the pilot's already on coming up the gangway, the captain's asking if you've got all the checklists signed and you're still trying to update these charts or do bits and pieces, you say, yeah, the checklist's all complete. Oh, I'll do that later. Yeah, everything's all ready, Captain, we're all ready to go, that's it, yeah. Because you've got to achieve this deadline and you're pushing it on. And inefficient systems will compromise that safety. So what I'm looking for is, does the system reduce that workload? And that's what I'll keep coming back to on this presentation. How can we do a stopwatch test? Does it make it quicker, easier, more efficient, that job? And that really is, are they simplifying the tasks or are they complicating the tasks? It's very, very easy to have what I call techno-babble on the bridge. You get a lot of stuff which is non-MIMarEST technology, and you think, what is all this? What is all these acronyms and all these digits and all this? What are we talking about? You know, we talk a little bit later. We talk about cat zogs and all the work. Oh, safety margins. Now I understand safety margins, got that. But what's this? What's this? Why do you have to use a different kind of communication? So it's got to simplify the task, and a part of that is removing duplication. And on the bridge, on the ships, we get so much duplication. You can get Excel spreadsheets for working out underkeel clearance, then you've got to go and put it somewhere else in another form, then you've got to put it in another form, and then you've got to put it in an ECDIS in 4 or 5 different places, and you've got charterers' information that's exactly the same as the information you're sending across the agent, and back and forth, back. And then you've got emails flying in from people from shoreside because they can't be bothered to look up on their Excel spreadsheets. Much easier to send an email to the captain. He's got nothing to do. Yeah. What's the dead weight of your ship? Yeah. Why do you know that? Why are you asking me that email again? They're sending this information. Oh, why didn't you answer my email? Because you're busy coming to port. So this duplication is something we see all the time. And very importantly, is it appropriate? The software, the systems we're looking at, are they appropriate for the job? Is that system what we're looking at, and the software, whether it's passage planning software, is that appropriate for a tanker on lightering duties or an Aframax, as opposed to a cruise ship, for instance? Sometimes people develop these systems and they say, well, these are for everybody. And because they're for everybody, then there's just too much information in there. It's not focused to where we want it.
How many people in the room have been navigators or using ECDIS or use ECDIS in a day-to-day environment now? Or manage ships that do? Fair few. So when we at ChartWorld put together our ECDIS system, we wanted to concentrate on something that would be very easy to use, and as you'll see from some of our banners outside, have a lifetime warranty, and we put in a touchscreen because a lot of crews use iPads and smartphones, and they're used to the zoom in, zoom out panning functionality. So we added that to an ECDIS. It can be turned off, it can be turned on, but generally we wanted to put that in to make it easier to use. We have two hard drives in the ECDIS that work in RAID. So you get, if you've got dual ECDIS on board, you've got redundancy of 4 hard drives. And most importantly, we wanted to have a lifetime warranty on our system. This is because at the end of the day, it's just a computer. So I don't suspect many of you are working with a laptop that's older than 5 years, because they die and they need updating, and all the Windows updates, all the ECDIS updates that are required to happen cost money, give you headaches. With all these IMO standards coming in, it's getting a bigger and bigger challenge for ship owners and ship managers, and it's not going to get any easier, I have to say. Something that came up recently in the IHO world, there's a working group which is talking about S-mode. So some of you can see it on the ECDIS outside there. Every ECDIS manufacturer develops something different. So there's an argument in the community to have S-mode, so whereby, a bit like when you drive a car, whenever you get in a car, you know that the pedals and the steering wheel are roughly going to be in the same place, and your dashboard's going to be here, and you have a speedometer. So everyone, they're saying, when you look at an ECDIS, if you got on any ship with any ECDIS, you should generally be able to use it. This S-mode argument is ongoing. It's not defined. We're part of the working group which are trying to define what should be in the standard mode on any system. So in an emergency, a crew member can hit that S-mode button and everything is suddenly familiar. But the ECDIS still needs to be convenient for what they are doing and designed in a way that it's easy for them to use. We replicated some of the tests that the Korean organisation and working group did on 3 major brands of ECDIS, and replicated them in our test centre. And it looked at 22 different functions and the way that people used it and the speed in which those functions could be carried out. And for us, it showed that our e-globe was 2 to 3 times faster on 20 out of 22 of those functions. And that is because we spent a lot of time defining the user interface. specifically to work in this way. So all of these types of things are part of our business model and part of the lifetime warranty on the system to keep everybody up to date with all the latest standards.
I think a very key word there before Emma turns it off is that reliability. If we're looking at integrated systems and the use of integrated systems and efficiency, then they've got to be reliable. I mean, how many times again at home have you just wanted to print off a document and it's doing an update, it's doing this, and suddenly you're wasting a huge amount of time just faffing about with some software because it's doing something which you didn't expect it to do. You just want to print off a document before I go out. We can't have that on board ships. And if we're starting to get what I would now start looking at the whole risk concept, then if we're getting systems which are saying, well, we're going above and beyond what we need to do to satisfy the minimum standards, and we've got dual hard drives and dual power supplies in there, which is above the minimum standards, well, why are we doing it? Well, you're doing that because that's a risk and a risk reduction. That's fantastic. If we've got systems which are quicker, easier to use, quicker to operate, then it doesn't mean that the age all in that case with a second officer we can get rid of him. No. What that means is that second officer or master, whoever are doing that, it doesn't have to spend time on that mundane task. They can spend more time looking out the window. So if we can do things quick, efficient, easy and reliable, then we've got more time to do what we're supposed to be doing, which is perception, comprehension and projection. And that's exactly the sort of the wheel that I start turning in my head as we look at these systems. Sorry, I'll press the go back. So we looked at integrated systems. We can see what's around the vessel. We're starting to get a feel for how that works. And then the all-important word compliance. And a lot of the time when we're dealing with ships, particularly dealing with shipping companies, then the key thing is compliance. We've got to comply. Well, of course we do. It'd be very nice in this day and age if we could just design ships and do things what we wanted to do and look at the seagulls and look at the sunrise and look at the sunset and drive around, and it doesn't work because we don't make any money. If we don't make any money, we're out of a job. We've got to make money, that's the job, and to make money you've got to be compliant. But the misconception all the time, particularly when we're looking at risk, is that compliance is the highest standard. It's not. Compliance is a standard, it's an acceptable standard. In fact, the terminology we use with Lloyd's underwriters, if a vessel is fully compliant, everything is in place, then that sits right in the middle, a moderate risk. If you want to move to a better levels of risks, slight and minimal risks, then you as a company have to show, or the officers have to demonstrate, that they have in place risk reduction matters or procedures, processes, which are above and beyond the minimum standards of compliance, the dual servers, etc. So that's the sort of world we like to operate in. As one insurance underwriter says to me, every single claim of millions and millions of dollars we get are on fully compliant ships. They are, everyone's compliant, but it's that understanding risk and moving above it. What we're looking at when we go to these kind of systems, well, we know we've got to be type approved, and we've been through this whole sort of process of type approval. We know that, we get a certificate and we go for it, and that's pretty straightforward. No, it's not. And we've just proven it's not. Over the last 3 or 4 years, we've proven it is incredibly confusing, and the market gets confused by the simple issue of type approval. If we are type approved when we purchase the equipment, we purchase a ship, that's great. And then along comes new standards, IHO standards for ECDIS, presentation library number 4. And there might be a new type approval for ECDIS. And suddenly the maritime world starts getting this confusion about, now I've got to get a new ECDIS because it's no longer type approved. No. If it's type approved when you purchased it, it stays type approved. That's it, job done, fantastic. But, and it's a big but, you must maintain the standards, the software standards. And these systems, ECDIS in particular, and what's around the corner and all the rest of it, that is going to be the biggest issue I see with shipping companies, is not fully appreciating and not having proper procedures in place to maintain the software standards. So if I got my iPhone going on there, then it's an iPhone, it's great. But if I haven't updated it, then then it's not a legal iPhone. Well, it's a legal iPhone. But if I haven't updated my ECDIS for the software, then I get issues. Now, one big company operating 100 plus cruise ships, it's, well, yeah, not a problem. Presentation library number 4, we should be okay on that, pretty straightforward. It's just a software upgrade. Anyone have issues with upgrading to presentation library 4? No. The problems come along is that if you are early adopters of ECDIS systems, so you've got some old systems, still perfectly legal, still type-proof, fantastic, oh, look at this, coal-fired or whatever, fantastic, I'm an early adopter, fantastic. Oh, here's your oh, sorry there, Capt, can't update on that. No, ooh, you got one of those, haven't seen one of those for a few years. Oh, no, that's not going to update now. What you need, Captain, is you need a new hardware there, mate. You need a new one of these, and a new one of them, and a new one of that. Oh yeah, well, how am I going to fit that? Oh, tell you what, I need to drill a hole in this bulkhead. Whoa! Now I need to get class in for bulkhead penetrations. Now, oh, hang on, now it's a big problem. Because suddenly we say, well, okay, I can update my software, but the same as any computer, if your hardware can't support it, then you're in trouble. Exactly what Emma was saying about the 5-year situation. And lots of systems then can't, heading sensors is a classic case. So there's my old gyro that's been ticking away quite nicely before. It worked on the old software, but now it doesn't communicate because I've upgraded the software. Well, you know, sorry about that, you've got to buy a new one. And we're just not aware, and there's nothing on board understanding this hardware software issues. And that's where I focus in very much on board the ships. Say, what have you got? How is that when you plan maintenance? What do you have as an issue now? We should be looking at installation surveys. Well, magic, you know, particularly this company here, lots of things have to have an installation survey, but an installation survey for an ECDIS, well, class come along and say, yes, everything is correctly in place and the backup system, etc. But it's not a real in-depth installation survey like you would expect, a failure mode effect analysis or a proper assessment of all the equipment. No, we just put it on. But now it's my primary means of navigation. Yeah, away you go. So there's a kind of like a hole there. So if we're now going to say, well, actually, as an insurance company, what have you done as a company to go beyond the minimum standard? Have you had an independent installation survey? No, we don't need one. We don't need one. I know you don't need one, but I'm just saying, do you want to go above the minimum standard or not? Do you want to reflect that risk in your premiums, which is the bottom line? When we put moderate, all these different levels, that is basically driving the premium for that vessel. That's what you're doing. Installation surveys, they should be done. That's okay. It's not covered by mandatory, but it's incredibly important risk reduction. So many times I go on a ship, and you go on that vessel, and it'll have an ECDIS system, and everybody hates it. Ah, this is the worst system ever. It's rubbish. On my last ship, it was much better. This one's rubbish. Who bought this rubbish? Keeps crashing, rubbish. Never seen such a lot of rubbish in my life. It was terrible system. And there's obviously a problem with it. You can go to the next ship on the berth, exactly the same ECDIS. Fantastic. Never had a problem. Never had a problem. Always worked well. 99 times out of 10 is because of a bad installation. And often that comes from, and there's a number of good examples, where the system has been purchased by the yard, and then the yard subcontractor to knows a friend who knows someone else who installs it. And then there's all bits of wires and whatever, all that kind of stuff. And then you live with a problem for the life of that vessel. And you incur huge amounts of costs trying to fix that all the time. Certification is important. Obviously we need our compliance certificates, of course. But then it's looking at proving that you've gone above the minimum standards, proving you've got risk reduction methods. What paperwork can you show me that you've done failure mode effect analysis? What have you got to show me you've got performance records? What have you actually got to say that someone knows what they're doing, is looking after this as a system? Particularly if you're looking at the charter market, for instance. Oh.
No.
Well, was that me?
To keep everyone awake.
I hope that screen flashed, or was it just me?
When ChartWorld install our ECDIS systems, we work with the engineers from the shipping companies and our own engineers on pre-installation checklists. These may seem a bit pointless in some ways, but they are not. They are very much a live document, and they need to be kept up to date when new standards come in, like connectivity to bin, WASP, bands and VDR that came in last year. A lot of current existing installations needed to be updated, and unless you do a correct installation survey when you're doing that, when you're trying to get the installation certified by class, or when there's an issue with the ECDIS at some point later on, it's important that that survey information is recorded. So as well as updating our document, we have a detailed checklist, pre-installation checklist, which the crew complete, takes you through all of the information, connectivity to all of the different items, and then an installation plan is produced. And this links into what we're doing when we're installing one system, two systems, the other equipment. It's important when you're retrofitting, even more so important when you're doing a new build, when it's all mapped out from day one. Two other things that are important, and coming back to the standards side of things, Paul was talking about important maintenance of software and maintenance of the hardware to make sure that the installation is alive and keeps on living. Two things that are coming up in the next couple of years, which seem a long time away, but they will not. One is cybersecurity, which everyone's talking about now, the hot topic. How we deal with cybersecurity, with an ECDIS, with digital data, how that affects the rest of the bridge equipment, how that affects your safety management system. We'll talk a lot more about that after the coffee break later. And also S100, the magical S100 phrase that everybody is talking about. For those of you that don't know, right now in ECDIS, any charts, any display of data, any encryption of data is all dealt with by S57 and S63. They're the two main standards. This is all changing to S100 and S101 when the IMO finally sign off the specification. But I heard this week actually that should be around 2022, which is not so far away. But every shipping company at that point is going to have a shock because they're going to need to rip off all their existing equipment and install new ones which are compliant to display S100 data. And S100 is a bit more like Google Maps today. So on Google Maps you will have, this is where Starbucks is, this is where the nearest fuel station is, this is where the jellyfish are. So it's going to layers and layers and layers of data which the crew will need to filter through, and that will be part of their voyage plan, it will be how they navigate the ship. So it's going to be a very different way of using charts and this whole big data concept that everybody's talking about. But the systems today are not going to support that. Hydrographic offices today do not produce data in that format, but that is all changing. And as I say, 2022, not so far away now, and that's when it's going to all start to happen. So updating the equipment, keeping it up to date is important. Even if S100 doesn't come in for another few years, having an S100 system installed next year, or when you're retrofitting a ship, might not be such a bad idea.
I think with that, if you take away, only take away 4 digits from today, just 4 things in your mind, S100 is a thing to take away. And I can assure you that 2022, 2023, 4 or 5 years is nothing compared to how big a change that potentially is going to be in the digital world. Not just like this, the digital world. And what I'm pushing all the time now with shipping companies is saying, what have we got in place as shipping company to identify the hazards which face your company with the introduction of S100? And most of the answers are, huh? What is that? I don't know what you're talking about. And that is fair enough, straightforward. It is a massive change. The way, if you think that's just a software upgrade, then not. It's a huge change. And I would encourage you now, if you're managing a shipping company, to go to whoever provides your data, digital data, and say, I want to now know, what am I exposed to when S100 comes around? What am I looking at? What hazards do I need to face? How are you going to help me as a company? Will it be a hardware change? Will it not be a hardware change? How is that going? And you'll find a lot of answers, I don't know, got to be right. But you've got to start that process and have a dedicated risk assessment approach of saying, how are we going to look at S100? Because it's, some people, they say these kind of things are like a tunnel with a little light at the end of it. Well, S100 is, yeah, a tunnel with a light at the end of it, but that light is a very fast train coming down that tunnel very fast towards you. It's not some bloke walking along with a torch. It'll be there. And that will have a big effect.
And it will affect the insurance of the vessel, it will affect chartering potential, it will cover all of those grounds because it's going to be a very different way of navigating and the data that you take into account.
Okay, so we're going to move across to bridge team. Oh, looking good. So bridge team obviously is a key part of what we're looking at. How does that team work and how do they operate and how is that supported by these systems that we're talking about. Now if we're going to get this right and we're going to make sure our bridge is efficient and we're going to improve safety by improving situational awareness, then actually these systems have got to be a part of the bridge team. They've got to be fully involved with and a part of the team. If we're just using the same old method which we used before and then we're forgetting about the digital systems, then that's not working. Equally, we've got to modify the way in which we work as a team and not just have someone on ECDIS and someone on a Sextant. So I've always used a Sextant, I'll be okay, and away we go. Very good, reliable system. What's the best accuracy you can get from a fix on a Sextant? What we generally sort of get in at sea. Personally, I would celebrate if I got a mile. Is that about right? Is anyone else going to say, oh no, I was always within...
More than that.
Yeah, a mile was, I'll go down the bar now, I'll have a pint, yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. So, it's not, it wasn't often 10 metres, was it? No. So, when we put that into sort of perspective, we can go, and the reliability of the Sextant, well, yeah, was it always 100% reliable? Depends who dropped it. Depends what the index error was. Depends what a parallax error was. Yeah. What about the fact that there's a cloud? Yeah. So this concept all the time that the old ways are always the best ways isn't necessarily true. It's an evolving system. What is certainly for sure is that traditional navigation for the visual concept is still very, very key. And a key part of that which we must take into the digital world is never rely on one source of input. So we can always got our backup systems, not just a backup ECDIS, but I mean how are we making sure that we're confirming what we're getting from the ECDIS or from whatever else with another means. And this is really where our bridge team should work. And we know we've got good communication there. I always like the look on here. This second officer there, he's obviously enjoying that. The captain's got the con, he's looking really worried. And even important, the helmsman thinking, crikey, I hope he knows what he's doing. And that's a key part of that bridge team. I mean, how many of you have been at sea and you've been saved by the helmsman? I certainly have. When I've stood there, it's okay, we're going to go starboard 10. Starboard captain. Oh yeah, sorry, port 10, thank you very much. Yeah, that's great, that's good. And he's aware. So it's all a part of that communication and we're aware of that for sure. But where do we bring in our digital systems? They have to support it. And then we've talked already about if I'm now on the bridge of the ship, I can get my real-time system, I got the ability to, my perception is my visual or my radar, I can then comprehend it better from a system which is giving me more information, and that might not just be the ECDIS, let's move above and beyond that, let's look at I can see that light, which is that light? Yes, I can see that on the ECDIS, I want to see some more information, oh look at this, digital light lists. If anyone's ever looked at digital light lists, they're quite good, it gives you a horizon, it shows you what the lights are, I looked at them, I thought that's a good idea that. I was at sea for 20 odd years and I just thought all I had to do was update them and put them back in place. I didn't realise you're supposed to read them. Oh, actually they're quite good, yeah. There's quite good stuff in there. Same as a Mariner's Handbook. Only started reading that when I came ashore, it's quite useful. But actually there's some good stuff in there. But if someone can get a better way of presenting it to me, quick and easy, then that's a lot better. If I'm back there flicking through books trying to find chapters, it's not really a part of my team. But if I can get it quickly, see the horizon light list, that's great. See that information from the port, what's the VTS, what channels they work on, okay, that's fantastic. That's the level of digital solution we should be working at. And it should improve effective communication. And that really is a key part of it. So we talked on those different examples of communication there, but if that VTS station was saying that Woodburn, and you'll see that on the chart in position. Oh yeah, okay, I can see that straight away, no problem. It's anchorage number 2 or what. That improves my communication. Equally, if I have a system which is telling me where white-borne roads are now, because then it's already in my head and I might be able to decipher that a bit quicker. One which we use, one company where they, again, full ECDIS, and they looked at the way in which they communicate in order to reduce the amount of errors, which is checking, counter-checking. You've got two, the master and the officer of the watch, one's got the con and one's monitoring, and the helmsman, etc. as a team. Then if you're giving information, you're always giving the source of that information. So we are 2 cables starboard of track by ECDIS. And then the con would say, yeah, I can see that visually. Yeah, that's the same as on the PI, thank you very much. Or, no, on the PI we're on track. Okay, let's check that again. But we're constantly, as soon as you hear some information, you don't just say, we are 2 cables starboard of track. That's it. Life being life, if you've got a captain who says, we are 2 cables starboard of track, I was okay, that sounds good to me. I'm not gonna challenge that. But if you say, the ECDIS says we're 2 cables starboard of track, okay, we can blame the ECDIS. We take away that barrier of authority. We're actually saying what the system we're looking at, and that improves it hugely and cross-reference it straight across. 2 cables starboard of track by ECDIS, confirm that by Sextant. Oh, fantastic, yeah, we're happy with that. Or visual or radar. But that works and works well. Initially people took a while to get into that, but the use of that was great. Reduced incidents down, bridge team working well, and it meant they were using the digital systems much better on board and more reliable and reliance on them. If we're doing that, then all this is very well and good, but our plans, our navigational plans, have to be our intention. Because if we don't have a proper navigational plan, passage plan, voyage plan, then no one can monitor my intentions. If we just say, well, you know, we're going to go follow that red line, off we go. Yeah, well, where are we going to wheel over? When are we going to start altering course? When are we going to reduce speed? When are we going to call VTS? Oh, I know, we're just going to follow the red line. And one of the greatest dangers, or one of the greatest failings, which I see in ECDIS now, is voyage planning, passage planning on ECDIS. So if you go on a bridge and ship, so let's start talking about voyage planning. What's the first thing that people start to do? What's in your experience, what do they start doing? Voyage plan on ECDIS, what do they start doing?
Filling in waypoints.
Waypoints, let's drop waypoints. Like some, you know, dropping here, there, waypoint. Oh yeah, that's fantastic. Waypoints, all the waypoints all around the car, fantastic, great. I seem to remember, it was a while ago, the 70s when I went to sea, there was this little thing called appraisal. Did you remember that? Does anyone remember that word appraisal, or is that gone? Is that in the box with Sextant? I don't think so. 80% of the voyage plan is appraisal, knowing where everything is and the dangers. So if we're not doing proper plans, we can't monitor our intentions. And if we don't use visual cues, why have we dropped a waypoint there? Well, because it was, you know, it was easy. You know, well, why didn't you drop it when it's a beam that light? And then you can say, we'll come up to wheel over position. Yes, we're a beam with a light visual. Oh yeah, I didn't think of that, didn't you? I just wait for the alarm to go off and then alter. It's bringing in all those good traditional navigational methods, and it's not difficult, but it just requires a bit of a cultural change and understanding how to use those systems. And when that happens, we get a far, far better bridge team and their digital systems. You've got the bad word.
I do. My favourite topic, cat socks. Anyone involved or know what cat socks are all about? Category zones of confidence. So when I was a paper chart compiler many years ago, and I was drawing the Admiralty charts, we had a little part that we put on the end called a source data diagram. And they're always on the paper charts, and I published a chart in, when was it, 2005, and it was 70% based on survey data from 1867. So it's a brand new chart, but the survey data on it was old, and how reliable, who knows, but it was a brand new Admiralty chart. The same applies to cat socks in ECDIS today. It's nothing new, but it's a different way of assessing the risk when you're doing a voyage plan and when you're navigating. And it's something that a lot of our customers are starting to have to look at more and more, because charterers are starting to want to charter vessels to more unfamiliar waters in Indonesia with old surveys. and the shipping company has to weigh up the insurance risk and the risk to their vessel of damage by navigating through waters that were maybe surveyed in the 1800s. So then you come into looking at high density ENC data, crowdsourcing of bathymetric data, MH370, the plane disaster, that a lot of crowdsourcing of data was something that was used a lot in that recovery and investigation project. And this is something else that could potentially be used with ECDIS. But right now, it's not deemed efficient, it's not deemed legal. Who can blame who if there's an incident when they're using crowdsourced data? But it's something that is going to become more popular. It just depends how it's depicted on the ECDIS. But looking at CATSOCs, one thing that we've got on our ECDIS now, and I think we're one of the only ECDIS that have implemented it, is a check status when you're doing the route check for CATSOCs. So if you select this little button here on the ECDIS which says Use CATSOC, it takes the inter-tanko values for CATSOC risk, and it incorporates them into the ECDIS route check. So all that is doing is it's highlighting, okay, this part of your plan has a survey which is an area which is unsurveyed, then you have to step into your risk mitigation and risk assessment procedures. So it's just highlighting to you where you should be taking extra caution. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's at least highlighting where you should be looking into it. So we recently did a campaign to our customers. How confident are you around CATSOCs in ECDIS? So have you defined in your safety management system, for example, how CATSOC information should be used for UKC calculation? Is it taking into effect the vertical depths? Are the crews adjusting the safety contour based on the CATSOC values? All of these kind of questions the crew should be looking at every time they're doing a voyage plan and a route check and taking that into account. In our ECDIS, we can define the CATSOC values based on your own company values, or I'm sure many of you have seen this lovely Inter-Tanko guide to safe navigation, somewhere in here. Where is it? Somewhere in here is a list of all the CATSOC values here. These things: zone of confidence, position accuracy, plus 20 meters, plus 50 meters, plus 500 meters, worse than 500 meters, and unassessed, unsurveyed. So all of these values are in our ENCs that we're using today, and they need to be assessed. So what the ECDIS is doing is highlighting that to the mariner. It's giving you more information to try and navigate safely and do a more effective route plan.
Hang on, come on, there's no way in a room full of mariners like yourself, you're not gonna, someone's going to ask a question about you. Come on. There must be someone's got a question about you unassessed. Yeah? Does it not cause issues?
Time's up. I got a question.
Oh, look at it, see?
You have a question?
Yeah.
Start? Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
A couple of weeks ago, the New Zealand equivalent of the MIB published a report into the grounding of a passenger vessel called the L'Austral off the south of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it's good. It's good. I would make a point of reading accident reports because it's good,
Yeah.
low-hanging CPD fruit for institute members. And it raised issues about the ECDIS, which is why I want the piece of paper along with me. It said the operation of the Austral's ECDIS did not meet good practice as defined in the IMO guidance or the standards set out in the operator's safety management system. I'll highlight a couple of issues. SOLAS Chapter 5 says that electronic navigation charts or paper data has to be issued officially by or on the authority of a government authorised hydrographic office.
Yeah.
But then in the accident report, without commenting on it, it said the ECDIS was loaded with an unofficial ENC for the area where the ship ran aground.
Yep.
And then it goes, but in the area of the accident, the underlying survey information was assessed as having a CATSOC of B. However, the ENC loaded in the ECDIS at the time of the accident had a CATSOC of U. Now, there seems to be a number of issues coming out there that
Brilliant.
the ship was blatantly using an unofficial chart, yet nobody seemed to recognise that and deal with that.
Can I put a couple of comments on that, and then Emma may have a view as well. Yeah, absolutely right. So in the areas where we don't have full ENC coverage, for instance, then we know if we haven't got ENC coverage, then those areas can either be filled with official raster charts. If raster charts are not available, then we should be looking at paper charts. We know that. That's pretty straightforward. A very, it wasn't an incident, but I went around one large commercial vessel with an underwriter who was looking forward to this in Barcelona. He's looking forward to a nice day out on this particularly nice vessel, and looking for a jolly. And he ended up virtually having a heart attack, this guy, because same issue. We're there on the bridge. Everything looked fantastic. Everything looked lovely. The cappuccino was nice, and the croissants were lovely. Oh, fantastic! Except their full ECDIS system was working on unofficial data. Mentioned that to the captain, and he went ballistic. He said, "Who do you think you are coming on board here telling me that? What's your game?" Not quite that, but he says, of course it's official. We've got all our official oils here. I said, look, it's not official. And in the end I said, I don't want to cause any problem, but I'll scroll through this chart and I'll show you, there it is. It says this chart shall not be used for navigation. And he flummoxed. He said, how could that possibly happen? Some ECDIS systems will fill in, if there are no ENCs, into unofficial charts without you doing anything. And then they then can sit on that unofficial data, and you manually have to flick them back again. So that is a failure of procedures, it's a failure of the company to understand what they have, and it's a failure of awareness. It is not just people blatantly ignoring the rules, it is suddenly someone querying the pitch. Querying the pitch, can I say that? Someone making a mess of the system by adding some twist in it we didn't expect. That poor insurance underwriter said, hang on, so I'm carrying a full risk for this vessel and it's trundling around here on unofficial data not designed for navigation. I said, yeah. And that's where, hang on, let's sort this here and now. So that is an issue. How do we manage that? That's understanding what we have on board and how can we check that and go for that. That's procedures, that's training and being aware of it. And it is not as simple as just saying it's flagrant disregard of it. The issue then of B's and U's, well, the unofficial data is unofficial data, so it could be U. B, well, that represents what we have here, and we got these. If I had my way, I haven't, I would just delete the word CAT-ZOG and call it safety margin, because then that's mariner speak. My safety margin is plus or minus 50 metres. Oh, okay, I understand that. I understand what that means. It could be 50, it could be 50. Great, right. Why do you call it safety margin? Nice and easy. But have I allowed for that is the next question. Now, what you have a problem, a huge problem, is if we just put in our SMS system that when you're assessing under keel clearance and all the rest of your passage plan, then you, the second officer, you must assess the CAT-ZOG. Yeah, there you go, job done. My job's finished, SMS, email, you sort it. That's a huge job. So now suddenly this poor old second officer's got to go through and look at all these CAT-ZOGs and work them all out, and whoa. And that's why what Emma's looking is a digital solution. That it's done, and it will highlight to me when it is whatever I've put in there as a warning. Okay, I can see that is outside the parameters I want to operate on. So I'm now working on safety margins, and I'm putting into here safety margins that are acceptable to me, and the system will then throw that out. Under keel clearance, wow, we're going forever about CAT-ZOGs and under keel clearance and people getting that wrong. It is simply a case that the under keel clearance should assess the safety margin, the quality of the charts. Exactly what we've done ever since we're to sea. We had that wonderful figure of 10% of our draft was our safety margin. What's the saying here? So what we're looking at, we always have that 10% included quality of the chart and all these other bits and pieces we weren't sure. So 10%. So if I say the safety margin in my under keel clearance is 10% of my draft of my vessel, dynamic draft, then that should be the CAT-ZOG, if I look at it here, should be less than my safety margin, i.e. my safety margin should incorporate the CAT-ZOG. What I don't do is I do my safety margin, then I add another bit on, because, well, we don't go into a port. How many ships have not gone into a port because the under keel clearance calculation said don't go into a port? Not many. I tell you what normally happens, and maybe it's just me, maybe I've just been unlucky in life. I go on board a ship, VLCC, Singapore. There we've got this beautiful Excel spreadsheet, ECDIS ship, wow, fantastic, beautiful underkeel clearance, beautiful, all lovely, all perfect, in compliance with the rules and regulations. All great. And I said, well, it's fantastic, I can see you achieve the required underkeel clearance of the company. Yep, that's great. But let's work it back. I see you were doing 2 knots all the way into Singapore. Oh, no, we no. You were doing 2 knots. It says here, your speed, 2 knots. No. I said, I tell you what, maybe what you're doing, is when you get your Excel spreadsheet, the first thing you put in there is the company requirement, and then you work it backwards. So it looks good, but it's rubbish. It means nothing. Again, it's ticking the box. And then you get the statement, well, that's because if we add the Capt zog, we can't go in. And then we're in trouble. And then we get, well, that's wrong interpretation of the data. If our procedures don't allow us to apply the Capt zog, we're doing something wrong. We don't fudge it. And that's what's happening awfully on the ships, is people are fudging it because they're just not understanding what it actually is. Well, I think Emma personally developed this, didn't you? You did this yourself, so it's very good. Is presenting here is an efficient way in which a digital solution can be made. If you talk to a digital engineer, technobabble people, it's a piece of cake. Within a millisecond, we can assess this digital data and tell you which Capt zogs are a problem or not to you, based upon what you put in there. What does that do? It removes human error. That improves safety. Secondly, it is a more efficient job than a second officer spending 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour going around looking for it. Therefore, they got more time to do the job properly. But you're absolutely right, and New Zealand's absolutely right. Was the ECDIS at fault? No. It was the people using the ECDIS that's at fault. And why are they? Well, are they stupid? No. It's because it's inefficient systems. They weren't aware of things caught them out. Okay, that's where we're back to what I was talking about before. Efficient systems and such.
And it's something we'll come on to later, but continued training and continued professional development of these mariners using these systems. But if you see here at the top in orange, this says very small information charts overlapping. And you've got these lines all over the screen to say they're either overscale or the charts are overlapping, and there's a category zone used. So all this information is available to the mariners, but it's about how they interpret that information and how they use it. So if you're using unofficial charts, the ECDIS will say not to be used for navigation on top. And there will be lines, and it will not indicate to you that it's a safe place to be navigating. So all of these things are there in the system, but the users have to be familiar on how to get them out. One other quick point quickly before we have a little break. User charts is something that, again, along a similar thread, to try and give the mariner more information and protect against these instances where they haven't marked a no-go area and they've sailed into it anyway. These things, user charts, so T&P notices. Mariners are supposed to plot temporary and preliminary notices on their ECDIS. Their user charts can be used for plotting no-go areas based on safety margin and safety contour, so that they can get into ports if the information in the ENC is maybe not good enough or maybe not accurate enough. We'll talk a bit more about user overlays later and how that incorporates into S100 and what that will lead to in the future. But this is another feature on our ECDIS today which a lot of our customers say they like, and is something that we think will be used a lot more in the future.
I wouldn't breeze over that again, because I think then we will take the coffee break, but it's really important. We did with Royal Fleet Auxiliary, anyone in the UK, with 200 years of history unhindered by progress. That's a very traditional, conservative way of doing things, particularly looking at no-go areas and such like. Well, they were so, there's no way that ECDIS is going to be better than paper. We had one ship, it's many years back now, where they had a team working on paper and a team working on the ECDIS and trying to do the same. Once we got that team within a couple of weeks on the ECDIS flashed up and knew what they were doing, they were much, much quicker, even plotting visual fixes and the guys on the paper charts. But this is a classic one, and it not to be just breezed over. So here we can say, well, I want to go in, same question. I got worked out my underkeel clearance, worked out my safety depth. My safety depth is 9.5 meters. I put that in, and then boom, the contour goes to 10 meters or goes to 15 meters. Well, in that case, actually the contour isn't my no-go zone, it goes to the next known deepest one. We know that. So actually as it's always been, our safety parameter or no-go area or limited danger line should be based upon our soundings. Well, that's all right, but our soundings don't come up as an alarm. Okay, so this is a bit messing me about now. So what I need to then do, and it says it in the SMS, in order to navigate within the safety contour, then the navigating officer shall draw a nice line around all the safety soundings. Fantastic. Email, job done. How long is that going to take? So if you sit there on an ECDIS and say, right, no matter how familiar you are with an ECDIS, let's get this second officer to draw around for the ports, whichever port we're in, Dubai or wherever it is, all the soundings with a little graphical line. That's going to take ages. Absolutely ages. If I go to a company like this and say, I want my user chart to have a no-go area on based upon a 9.2 meter sounding, I email it off, how quick does the email come back?
Almost instantaneous.
Almost instantaneous. I get it back, I load it. Magic. Black magic. That's the world of efficiency and digital. I really see the future of this. Because then it removes error, human error, but equally it gives that second officer more time to do the important jobs and not just joining the dots, which is 2-year-old kid could do. So it's taking away the mundane tasks and focusing on what we're supposed to be doing. That's efficiency. And these are the kind of things which I think are very valuable.
And it goes back to improving the functionality to better support the bridge team to do what they need to be doing. Having an automated layer of no-go areas, or an automated layer of MARPOL zones, or an automated layer of temporary and preliminary notices means the crew know that they have that information, the shore know that the crew have that information on their system and it's being applied. So that is what ChartWorld are looking at beyond ECDIS as it is today, and as we go into S100, again, this will become more important.
Good. As a situational awareness, shall we?
Yeah, I think so. We've got afterwards a bit more about cybersecurity, something about continuous training on the ECDIS, and the maintenance, and a little bit about digital data, and a video about temporary and preliminary notices. So a few more things to go through. Any questions at this point on anything we've talked about so far?
Okay.
Yes?
Definitely I think this form factor is the way to the future and so on. And also I find it very impressive that you have the S mode to make, thank you. You have the S mode to make things easy for people to use ECDIS on multiple vessels. You spoke about your redundancies, which include dual hard drives and dual power supplies and so on, yes? But what I was wondering was, you covered a little bit about the software. And we all know that these type of systems require software updates quite rapidly. It's not a mistake to say that. So how are these systems updated and kept updated? How would you do it?
For us, mostly, so we tend to do our software updates by patch. So we try to avoid sending engineers where we can on board, because it costs time and money for you guys and for us. And if we can, we will update the software via a patch. The recent S52, we also sent some CDs to some customers or changed a hard drive. So those are the three things that we will try and do by default. If we need to send an engineer, we need to send an engineer, but we want to try and avoid that scenario.
Right, so you send them immediately if it goes out of date? Is that how it works?
No, we tend to do about 2 software upgrades a year, 1 to 2 a year anyway, improving some of the functionality, implementing some new features. And then obviously when the IMO are going to announce a new change, like the S52 presentation library, or S63 4.0 I think is coming in a couple of years' time, we will make sure that we do that in advance. And I mentioned earlier about our sister company, 7Cs, so we have a slight advantage in that we are part of the working group which is defining these standards in the first place, and because we are selling our ECDIS kernel, the brain in our ECDIS, to other manufacturers, to defence organisations for their command and control systems, ECDIS, VTS, etc., we have to have a kernel which incorporates those standards and is compliant. So we're obviously a customer of our sister company, and we have that integrated in our system as well. So we have to do it well in advance, and we will communicate that to our customers as well in advance.
Because you can't run these systems if it's not updated.
Exactly.
Am I right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's where our lifetime warranty comes into it. On one of our banners downstairs, we're saying that, you know, we have a warranty that outlasts the ship it's on, and that's because we're continuously updating this, and
Right.
we don't sell our ECDIS, so we don't. It costs nothing. It's an ECDIS for free, and you are paying us for the other services like keeping it up to date, keeping it compliant, keeping it sailing with the relevant data.
Right.
So it's that part of it that we're concentrating on. So you don't have to worry about, oh, do I need to update this software? How much is it going to cost me? When do I need to send an engineer?
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I think we've done the first half's the boring bit, but the next half's really good. So make sure you come back, or else you'll miss some incredible stuff.
Okay, well, 10-15 minute break, and then we'll see you back here. What time is it now? Yeah, just before 7:30.
Just because of time, we'll start to move on. I think the guy ringing the bell's given up now, so we'll be okay. And then the areas we want to look at is training, maintenance, backup bridge, and support. So training, just very quickly going into training, because exactly what we were talking about before the break there, is that if we're having these systems, we've got to have proper training. And that people need to be familiar with the system. Now, as I often say, all training is worthless unless there's a proper implementation program. So we can do whatever training we like, but if the company don't support it and implement it on board, all we end up with certificates, and such as the example in New Zealand, they've probably got all the pieces of paper they can shake a stick at, but actually didn't know what they were doing. So we look at the world of ECDIS generic training. I think that's pretty well sorted out now. We've gone through that, and STCW, that's okay. But it's the familiarization training which causes quite a few issues, very current issues. And when we got the campaign, recent campaign, most of the issues there were because the officers were not familiar with that system. And that's quite a big problem. And then you say, well, actually, I spent ages. I sent my officer off on this familiarization training. When did you do that? Oh, we did it 2 years ago. That's fantastic. And again, before coffee, we have a question about software updates and upgrades. Well, they're a couple of years. So how do we now maintain that familiarization if we've now had a software upgrade? How many of you sent your officers off to refamiliarization after presentation library number 4? Not many. But actually, it was one of the biggest changes in the symbols and the alarm management of ECDIS ever since it came to be. So all of a sudden, we have all these people who don't know what the new symbols are, and they don't know about the alarms because I did my familiarization before, and now that's come into place. So familiarization has to tie in with software, hardware changes, and we have to focus on how to do that. And the bit really, when we're looking at risk and the world, I look at the insurance world, is this: how do we maintain continued competence? We can have all the certificates we like, but how do we keep ourselves up to date? How do we make sure that the guys on board of ships have got continued competence in the use of these digital systems? And it's not just the ECDIS. We're talking about how we update and maintain the charts and the digital chart management system. How are we maintaining our nautical publications? How are we using all those? What information can we get from those? So this is really an area which is important to us, and we'll see what Emma has as a solution.
Indeed. So obviously we have had classroom training, we've got training centres, online, on board, all of those trainings are available, but something that we've been focusing on a lot in the last couple of years is this part here, the onboard familiarisation service. I was just talking to someone during coffee break about how important it is for the continued competence of the crew when using the system. As Paul was saying, a lot of groundings are related to people not understanding how the system is used. What we've done is develop an offline CBT, which can be used on board the ship as many times as they like, and it also has a monthly assessment in it with certificates and an audit preparation section in it. So with top 20 questions by SIRE, by auditors, that the crew can go through and be prepared for when they come on board. The idea is that we wanted something which would be updated and kept up to date. So you can start the course, and I'll have to fill in my name. Hang on. Gonna be enough?
No, we want date of birth. Come on. We want it, don't we? We want it. Come on. Don't let it down. Come on. Come on. It knows if you like it.
3rd. How old am I? July. Ooh, let me think. 2000. Never ask a woman that question. There we go. So this takes you through the training course. It has split into different modules. It takes an hour and a half in total to go through, but you can use it like YouTube and just watch the same part over and over again on parallel indexing in ECDIS, or how to put a no-go area in ECDIS. So it's designed for that continued competence, and we update it twice a year. So if something like the S52 presentation library happens, then we will of course release a new CBT which shows you what's changed and the issues that come up. So this is available for our ECDIS, for our pilot software, for our ECS software, but it's designed to be used on board rather than in training centres, although we do have some training centres which use it at the same time. So different modules, a self-assessment, and a continued competence which you get from having this kind of training, which is more important than a certificate which maybe had a tick in the box 5-6 years ago. And this is the bit that we're trying to stress to our customers today. In fact, next month there'll be a new version of it with some more information around some of the new features that are coming up in the next few months from certain IMO standards. Here's one. For example, audit preparation. If we go into this section, they can look at a series of questions, some common troubleshooting questions, and keeps the crew up to date. If you want to, we had some customers ask for this to be linked into their sort of CPD systems. We haven't done that yet because the whole point of it is it's offline. To do that, it needed to be an online tool, but using it offline on the ship means that they don't need internet connectivity. They can print certificates or send them ashore, and they can be put in the crew logbooks to keep track of progress. We may link it into CBD, we can do maybe eventually, but we haven't done it so far because the request from the customers was more to have a continued offline solution that they could use many times. But who knows, it's evolving, 2 versions a year, we'll see what happens with the next couple.
But Emma, it's not necessary that CPD has to be online.
No.
As long as you demonstrate learning in one way or the other.
Yeah, yeah. And type-specific training doesn't really exist anymore. I mean, it was a myth really anyway. And as long as the crew are familiar and you have it in your procedures about how you train your crew, and you can demonstrate that, then that's all that really matters.
A myth put up by the British, a bit like Brexit.
You mean type-specific ECDIS training is not mandatory?
Well, all the requirement ever was to be familiar with the equipment you are using. So there were some flags like the MCA which said you need 16 hours of training on your specific equipment, and some ECDIS manufacturers at the time thought, oh, it's a good opportunity, let's develop a 16-hour course and charge $5,000 a person, and we'll do it in our training centre. And then there was this big industry around training which happened, but around 4 years ago, maybe, there was the IMO said that there is no such thing as type-specific training. It's about familiarization of the equipment you are using, which is what they always said. And they changed it again last year to say that the familiarization on the ECDIS is the responsibility of the shipping company, and the manufacturer must provide the relevant tools to the shipping company to do this familiarization. So it is one of the same.
Under ISM.
Under ISM, yeah.
So we can see that training has been an issue, but so we go back onto. There we go. Touch on some of these big subjects as well. Maintenance, and this again is if I'm on board a vessel now, or a surveyor and whichever organisation representing the time, then a key part of that is how we maintain our systems, and we sort of touched on this and pushed the importance of this, and this is even more important now as we get more and more digital solutions which are being put onto the ship. How do we maintain them? If it was, Sextant's gone. If we had our Sextant, that was okay. We could get our parallax error and index error, we can log it, that was all pretty good salty seamanship sort of stuff. But You know, you try to get a parallax error from a hard disk, it's very tricky, it doesn't work. It's a different world. So we need people who understand how to do that, and it's not just the mariner who should be maintaining that. Our IHO standards are really what drives those changes in software. And who drives the IHO standard is the shipping industry. It's amazing the shipping industry complained about ECDIS because it had too many alarms, so it took a long time, but the IHO changed their standard to presentation library number 4, which reduced the number of alarms, and everyone in the shipping industry complained. Oh, you asked for it. Yeah, we didn't want it. But so it's this mismatch. Be careful of what you ask for. But these are the standards, I said before, we need to make sure we maintain. And we are not, if we're looking at ECDIS, we are not a legal system if our IHO standards are out of date. We can have our type approval, that's a separate thing, but if our IHO standards are not maintained, then we can be deemed out of SOLAS. And that really requires, as we talked again, really about the software maintenance and how do we maintain that and what policies, and I think Emma's covered that really. And what we're looking at, if I'm looking at this as a risk issue, is can you show me your maintenance agreement? What do you have as an agreement on board this vessel? Is it an annual one? Is it a monthly one? How do we go through that? How do you sort it out? Well, what is your policies? How do you have that as a procedure? How does that sort of work? And if you say, well, I haven't got one, well, that's okay. That's still compliant. It's just that you're an average risk, you're moderate. But you're not going to benefit from a slight or a minimal risk because you haven't gone above those minimum sort of standards. And I think the last line there is really what we need to think, particularly with ECDIS, but of all digital systems, is that these systems, you can't fit them and forget them. They're not like a bilge pump or a piece of heavy machinery. You put it in and you grease it and you oil it and away you go. Very different to what we're used to in the maritime world. They need continuous software, hardware, maintenance. There's a different process we're looking at. If you go into looking at IT or OT, operational technology maintenance in a nuclear industry, then it's a completely different way to what we seem to be fumbling through in the maritime world. It's a key part of their risk reduction is the maintenance or control measures. And Emma's got quite a lot to say about that.
So with our E-Series concept, the reason we developed eServe was to provide this lifetime warranty. So we looked at the things which caused the most problems in ECDIS and did an analysis and tried to eliminate them at the very start and then offer the lifetime warranty. And because we don't sell the ECDIS, we are charging a service fee. So like Spotify, you pay a monthly fee and you get your music download. So we are asking our customers to pay us a monthly fee, and for that we are providing them a lifetime warranty, hardware, software upgrades, taking care of all these things. So when cybersecurity comes in 2021, we have a solution that we will push to our customers, which will mean that you don't have to do anything, it's taken care, your SMS can be updated. Same for S52, when that happened, that also was put into play. Something else that has come up, annual performance tests. We've always included an annual performance test as part of our package as an option. Although it's not mandatory for ECDIS, it is for a lot of other bridge equipment. Our technical director, he is on the committee at the IHO which is driving the mandation of annual performance tests, which we suspect will be in the next 12 to 18 months for ECDIS. And we've always had an APT checklist. It used to be 1 page. We now have 9 pages of elements which we have incorporated in this annual performance checklist, and this is what we have put forward to the IHO as part of the CIRM committee. So it looks at everything from software checks to backup arrangements, power supply, chart installation checks. These things can be run as part of PMS on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis. There's even daily things that the crew can do as part of planned maintenance. So we're trying to push this as part of our eServe concept and provide the tools and a free annual performance check as part of the package to make sure that the warranty lasts on the ship. And with our ECDIS, as I said earlier, after 5 years, it becomes a really old piece of equipment, so we are just replacing it free of charge with new equipment. So as long as you're paying us that continuous service fee, we are taking care of all the maintenance and upgrades on the system. And I think that is the part that our customers are valued the most. This last year was the first year that our ECDIS customers had a 5-year point, and if they were still subscribed to our service, they all got new ECDIS systems. So that that has really kind of made them see the value. And some of their colleagues in in the shipping associations, like, I have to buy a new Faruno at 20,000 or another new ECDIS because the standards have changed and I need to replace the hardware. We have none of that, so we take that away. And I think as the more and more standards change and this big data concept comes in, that's going to be the most valuable part, particularly S100.
Right. See how many times we mentioned
Favourite
S100.
topic.
We'll come back here in 4 years' time and say, we told you, we told you.
Probably still won't happen.
We recorded it, S100. So, maintenance is important, and I want to get down to the back of bridge because there's a few important things here. Looking at back of bridge, the chart room area we were talking about. I know that this is not a backup ECDIS because it's in the chart room, but the general subject of backup is important to us because when we look at a backup system, then it's something which allows us to continue, in the case of an ECDIS, that we should be able to continue to safely navigate in the event of an ECDIS failure for that voyage or to a contingency anchorage, not safely navigate forever and ever. It's just that short point at which you can then anchor or wait, but you can't sail on a backup system. You've got to sail on your primary system, and a backup is there exactly that as a backup to go through. But the issues we have really, again, the legal requirements, pretty straightforward. You can see that on our list of equipment, what we have as a backup, I have as ECDIS or sometimes as paper charts, etc. Very rarely now do you have, when you have a double ECDIS, is one label backup or one label primary. They're just two ECDISes which can synchronize and can go swap over and etc. etc. So that's pretty straightforward. What isn't straightforward is how we use that backup system. How do we make sure the backup systems are ready and available? We can show our list of equipment, but actually can we use it? Do we know it's there? Have we checked the integrity of that backup system? When was the last time you made sure the backup system would work? Do you do it once a watch when you hand over or not? How does that go through? And very quickly I can bring in my marine engineer story. See, marine engineers and ECDIS. So pretty big ship where they had I think 6 or 8 ECDISes across the bridge, big cruise ship, nice big ship. And then an excellent salesperson, it wasn't ChartWorld, not they don't have excellent salesmen, it was someone else, but they had sold as a part of this wonderful ECDIS integrated bridge system, an ECDIS system in the engine room. Wow. So that was very good. So that was a good salesman. So there it was in the engine room, nicely all linked in and all the rest of it. And the first couple of hours, engineers found it quite interesting. Then it started making noises and beeping, and what was that? I don't know what that is. Well, the idea was that you could see where you're going. Well, if I wanted to know where I was going, I wouldn't have been an engineer. I'm just, I'm here, I'm happy here, I don't need that. So what they do, switch it off. I don't like that. Why have I got this on? Let's switch that up. I've got enough things going on. And for 3-4 months, life went on board this ship quite merrily with the system switched off. And then a very dangerous, an inquisitive engineer came on board. Very dangerous, these people. So an inquisitive engineer looking around joins the ship and thinks, what? I don't know what that is. What's that? Well, I don't know. We never switched it on. I'll tell you what, he says, I'll switch it on. So we switched that on, and what happened? All the charts and all the things have been sitting in there, not updated for 4 months. The guys on the bridge have been doing theirs perfectly all the time. The engine room ones came up to talk to the ones on the bridge. The ones on the bridge, whoa, what's this? Zoom, the whole system crashed. Whole thing. You talk to the engineers, that's impossible. No, it's happened. Look, it's gone. No, it's impossible. It can't happen. It's not impossible. But the issue there was that the people on the bridge were not checking the integrity of the entire system. What they should have had is a clear instruction. Every time you're updating, every time you're looking at, every time you can see there's one system which is off. You cannot update and maintain an integrated system if a key part of it is switched off. Of course it's not. And that again is, how do we know if we don't have proper integrity monitoring that our backup system is ready and it's going to work? We hope it will do. Is it easy to use and is it synchronized? These are simple, straightforward questions you can ask when you're on board a ship, and often people say, I don't know. I know we satisfy the legal requirement, but I can't answer those questions. I don't know how that works. That's beyond me.
So one of the favourite features of our customers, so we hear, is our watch handover checklist function. Paul was talking about integrity monitoring. there's a button which you can hit in our ECDIS which take you automatically to this watch handover checklist. So it has a green, orange and red RAG system, which means that you can see each of the core things: position, systems and sensors, safety parameters, traffic, ECDIS alerts, and route monitoring, all as a quick visual. Okay, they're green, everything's okay. The red ones obviously need attention straight away, and the orange ones will need looking into also. This can be printed, it's kept in the log files, can be sent ashore, is useful at any point in time to take a snapshot of the condition of the ECDIS. So in the scenario Paul was just talking about, it would always say on here that there would be one system that wouldn't be connected or one system that wouldn't be updated. So this kind of thing, everyone has one, I think, on board, but they're usually manual, and the crew handover takeover checklist or watch handover checklist. But this is done automatically in the system and can be filed for the reports. So a really nice feature which a lot of our customers quite like. Now, talking about backup, a lot of people have obviously your main and your backup ECDIS, your primary and your backup ECDIS. But then a lot of people who are taking the leap into paperless also have a get me home folio of paper charts, so they call them, or still 60 or 70 paper charts on board in case both ECDIS fail. It's part of their risk mitigation procedures. We have something called an emergency navigation system, which over the last 18 months when I was in Asia started to gain some momentum, become quite a trend. And this was to replace those Get Me Home paper charts. We had a rather big Japanese shipping company who took this to use as bridge wings. So they wanted a portable solution which they could use for enhanced berthing and docking procedures in addition to their ECDIS systems on board. And it also acted as a backup because it had ECDIS software installed, it had their charts and publications installed, and they could use it to get to port as a risk mitigation measure in case of any issues on the ECDIS. We spoke to AMSA about it. We had a meeting in Australia with AMSA about their policy on backup arrangements to ECDIS, and their view was that they don't really care as long as you follow the regulations which state a master ECDIS or a primary means of navigation, which is your ECDIS and a backup. So whether you've got dual ECDIS or one ECDIS and paper, that's your primary and your backup. What you do beyond that as a backup to a backup is down to you and your procedures. So we have, as I say, a lot of customers now using this, and two things: in an emergency, if there's an ECDIS issue and you've got crew who are using dual ECDIS, and then they suddenly have to revert to paper charts and the Sextant kind of conversation again, then that in itself is a risk. They're not used to doing that anymore. They're using dual ECDIS all the time. They're using digital navigation. So by having a digital system as a backup, it uses the same charts as the ECDIS. It can use the type-approved ECDIS software. If you use our ECDIS, it's the same ECDIS software. So it's already familiar to the crew. And this is something that's usually on a tablet, independent, and the crew just must update the charts as they would their normal ECDIS charts. So this is another way of putting in place a risk mitigation measure for emergency procedures. And as a bit of a hint, this might have something to do with the raffle prize, which I hear is a bit of a tradition at these meetings today. So more about that later.
Okay, so the other key area we're looking at, I'll just touch very briefly on procedures, is that we know that if we've got procedures in place, it's a big job to keep our procedures up to date and relevant to what we have. What is important is that we have a system whereby within our ISM, for instance, that we can easily keep our ISM up to date to relate to what it is that we have on board the ship. And it's very easy to find an ISM system which was fine 4 or 5 years ago, but with all the changes of hardware and all, it just doesn't relate to the systems that are on board anymore. So how again do we manage that? That's quite a big process that we need to go through. The procedures have to be efficient and they have to be practical, and again, what is our proper implementation of those procedures? So often you see a shipping company says, well, I'm going to implement these new procedures. How do you do that? Well, I email the captain, these are the new procedures. Follow them, or lose you. Well, that's not proper implementation. Implementation is checking that the procedures are being followed through audits and superintendents or whatever, making sure they are practical, they're efficient, and they do achieve what we want to achieve.
So we, at ChartWorld, we have a safety management system for ECDIS called EQUIP, but most of our customers either use that to implement into their existing safety management system on the bridge, or they adopt it and incorporate our procedures. It's a living document. If something changes with a regulation, the procedures need to be updated. We have a new section 5 of our procedures which we've just issued, which talks about the onboard procedures with ECDIS and updating them around T&P notices, for example, because there were some changes there. So this kind of thing is important. In 2021, the IMO cybersecurity standard comes into force, and that is making sure that you have cybersecurity procedures and risk mitigation measures put into your SMS. So it's only 3 years away, it's not that long in the grand scheme of things, and people are still trying to work out what cybersecurity really is. You're supposed to have a cybersecurity officer dealing with this and dealing with the safety management system procedure updating. Not many customers that I've spoken to yet have that in place, but they are starting to be more and more people thinking about it, mainly because of all the media hype around it, I guess, at the moment. But something we have in ChartWorld, talk a bit more about that box in a minute, we issued to our customer our cybersecurity policy, which talks, it looks around the working groups that we're involved in on CIRM and BIMCO and around the IHO on looking at antivirus and cybersecurity measures around ECDIS and digital data management. So right now we have 2 basic ways to update an ECDIS. You use a USB stick or you use FTP connectivity through vSAN, for example, online or offline. So we have written a cybersecurity policy for both methods and issued this to our customers and recommended what they do and the articles that are associated with that through the likes of BIMCO, DMVGL, etc. So that policy is in place. Obviously it will change and it will be updated, but it is available to our customers to start integrating within their SMS. What we have also just launched last month, in fact, is eChart Secure. And this is a cybersecurity mitigation measure for dealing with digital data management. It's basically a lovely orange box in ChartWorld colours and will sit in between your ECDIS and your digital data mechanism on board. It means that you don't need to send, save, permit files, you don't need to take a USB anymore and take it from your chart handling software to your ECDIS. We don't need to deliver base media anymore on board, so all the worldwide charts we don't need to send to you by CD every couple of months. And the weekly updating can happen with a click of a button. So this means that you have a type-approved solution. So IEC, I always forget the number, 611-62460 is the IEC performance standard to ensure that data is safely exchanged and controlled. So this box will connect to our ECDIS and the digital data maintenance system and gives that kind of control and cyber secure solution for data. So right now it's just for our ECDIS. It can be done with any other ECDIS, but then it's not type approved, because the type approval for an ECDIS incorporates all the equipment that's related to it. It goes some way to mitigating the risk. We can never mitigate the human factor, which is the biggest liability, but by not having USBs anymore, by not sending CDs on board, and by using this box to control all the data, it certainly goes some way to mitigating cybersecurity.
The go back button.
Yeah.
Because we want to move across to the. Hey, you pressed the button 2 times. What's going on? Anyone think this is the first time? We want to go for the very important subject, which is like the huge climax of the presentation, like with the opera lady where she sings at the end, because we've got a nice video here. But digital data management is key to us, and how do we manage all this data? And as I was saying outside there at tea, coffee break, what has really dawned on me in the last 12 months or so is that human beings, no matter how clever they are as seafarers, will not be able to handle the huge amount of big data which is going to be fired at them over the next 4 or 5 years. So much data is going to be coming in that we've got to have digital solutions to how to manage that data. So we cannot just be using Pritt sticks and pieces of paper, cutting them out and sticking them on Navtex files anymore. We've got to move beyond that into a digital data management systems. And that's really a single source of updating, maintaining, not just the ECDIS, but all our systems. How can I look at that and see if all my publications, everything I've got on board is up to date with ISO standards, with chart corrections, with T's and P's, we'll talk a bit more on that, on all that. And how is it an efficient system? How much time do I need to spend doing that? If we think about the updates we get for our smartphones or for when it's pretty straightforward. Updates come in, you press the button, it says it's done, and it works. Fantastic. So what are we doing? How come we're faffing about for hours and hours doing bits and pieces? It should be a system whereby it's sent to us, we set parameters on board the ship, or the company sets parameters which will monitor the integrity of that update. That update then comes in within those parameters, and there's a simple failed, caution, warning, or go message. That's it. It is a way. So it's a very simple, should be a simple system. And that really needs that shore support. We should be able to have shore support all the time. We should be in a situation where our vetting inspector's asking us questions about why is that Navtex not displaying or whatever. And I say, okay, I will get the answer to you now. I can make a phone call, I can send an email. Before you go, we'll have that answer. Let's talk about the pump room for a moment. And it's not a, I don't know. That shore support has got to be there because that's a part of your whole team. And how are we monitoring so that the company should be able to monitor and make sure they're ready for audits? I know this ship's going in, she's in Sabine Anchorage and she's going up to Houston, and I know Chevron are coming on board. Then I want to make sure all the holdings and everything are on board. Yeah, I can see that, that's great. Actually, it's got a bit of an issue still with this. I can get that sorted out for them while I'm... All this is just digital data. It's not difficult to do, it's just that we're not used to it as such. And I know that Emma has got fantastic solutions to all of that.
Oh, I do, many. Digital data management, I'm not going to talk in detail about all sorts of digital data today. Most of you know that we have ABCS out there. It's the EMC service that most people are using today, the official one. Chart Browser is our tool that manages all of the data that goes on board the ship, updates the data, the orders come through. We also have all the digital publications going through that. It handles everything. Electronic publications from IMO, from ITU, ADP, your light list that Paul was talking about earlier, and all the data. And we supply the EMCs voyage by voyage. And the reason we do that is to keep the communication costs down by having smaller file sizes. And also, because it's digital data, it can be ordered at any time and the process is automatic. You don't need to do it in advance for the whole voyage. So we do it port to port, voyage by voyage for all of the data services. One thing that we've also done a lot more in the last year is pay as you sail. And this is where you have the paper chart mentality back on the bridge by having all the world's ENCs on your system, and you only get charged for the ones you sail through. So it's a slight premium product in that way, but if you've got a worldwide trading vessel, it's by far the safest solution and avoids things like a couple of grounding reports in the last years have picked up that the ECDIS doesn't have the appropriate scale chart on board, and it's not updated. So by having pay as you sail, you avoid both of those risks on board the vessel. Something we talked about earlier was the use of user charts overlays in the ECDIS. A little video I want to show you is talking about the temporary and preliminary notices in ECDIS. The London P&I Club highlighted last year that the need for ship owners and managers to keep their ECDIS systems up to date with key navigational information was falling behind somewhat. So weekly updates fine, but what wasn't happening was the application of T&P notices. And inspectors are quite hot on this topic now and are regularly noting findings where there's lack of awareness on the bridge of what the crew are supposed to do with these T's and P's, and if there is a procedure, they're generally not following it. So what we've done is we have taken all these T's and P's, put them into a layer and then are supplying that layer automatically to the vessel. So the Admiralty today have something called the Admiralty Information Overlay, which gives you these big red squares and green squares and blue squares of all the notices along your route which you need to take care of. What the crew are then supposed to do is interrogate those areas and plot them. What happens in most of the cases from the customers that I speak to is they're not entirely sure their crew are doing that, even though they probably should be. So by us automatically providing the crew this user chart layer with the corrections automatically supplied, you know that it's happening and you know they're all included. And this again, when S100 comes in, will be the way we can expand on these user chart layers. So today we have one for T&P, which I'll show you in a minute. The same principle will also apply for nav area warnings, for environmental information such as MARPOL, and no-go areas. We are looking at expanding it into piracy and other things that come along. But the point is you can switch these layers on and off so they don't clutter the screen. You can demonstrate to an inspector you've thought about all this information, and it filters some of that data for you. So have a look at the video, have a look at how it improves the route safety check on the ECDIS, and see what you think. And enjoy the music.
Well, most important bit.
The light. Oh.
Cyber attack. Quick. Everybody down.
Oh, there we go.
It is.
Every time I move, I should just stay still. Sorry.
There's a loose connection.
There's a loose connection somewhere. Sorry.
Shift to the backup one.
Yeah, the backup system. Oh, it's been fine the whole way through the presentation. Hang on. Try again.
Talk around it.
We can talk around it.
We've got it on display outside on the ECDIS.
No, we haven't, but I'll put it outside in a moment.
I'll just give it. What is? Well, look at that and hopefully get the video running because we are a little short on time. But what Emma's looking at there is this user chart concept. So T's and P's. We all know that's quite a big issue. How we plot the T's and P's. We can turn around and we can say all the mariners should plot them. We know in reality it's inefficient to do that at times. The amount of human error that's going to creep into that because people are not plotting them means it's a risk, it's a big issue. But also they are very important T's and P's with E&Cs because a lot of corrections are put out on T and P way before it's released in an E&C. So it's a very valid issue, it's a very valid risk. This system which they've got there is a system whereby, and again we'll show when we've gone for the break or the end, is that they will automatically plot the T's and P's by some black magic process of algorithm. And that's a really important concept, that they have developed something. There isn't someone sitting there in Germany who's plotting all the T's and P's and then putting it on a disk and sending it out. It is developing that algorithm, that clever software that says, okay, I can plot those T's and P's, and then I present it to you, it comes out, it goes on a user chart, and then as a mariner, you've then got that T and P. And what it beautifully demonstrates on the video we don't see there is that you can then run your check across there. And before, when you ran your check before the TMP was plotted, you would get nothing. But now, because the TMP is actually plotted, it will say, be careful, this area and such like. So it improves safety and it improves efficiency. Well, that is an example. Nav areas can be the same, MARPOL areas can be the same, whatever you like. It is an example of what can be done with big data, using it into very simple and straightforward. It's not taking away any of the responsibility from the mariner, it is just being more efficient in that the mariner has got an easier system to monitor and use those as such.
I'll try it again in a minute, but we'll talk about the next thing in talking about all these different informations and filtering that data. Right now I said we have Chart Browser, which does all the ordering of the charts, the updating of the charts. Now, what I want to talk about now is a glimpse into the very near future, in the next couple of months, of what ChartWorld are going to launch, and that is something called MIRA. And MIRA is the future, as far as we're concerned, around digital data management, navigation planning with ECDIS, and kind of takes you out of your comfort zone of where we are today. So if you forget everything that you know about voyage planning and digital data in ECDIS at the moment, and kind of have a look at what we're doing in MIRA, it's a slightly different way of thinking. And throughout our tour, I guess it's divided the audience, hasn't it? We've had some good arguments between one side of the room and the other, and we've had some audiences which have said, yes, this is absolutely good, and others which have been like, oh, I'm not sure about that. So MIRA is something that we're doing sea trials with at the moment, and is going to be released in the next few months. It stands for, we're still working title, My Route Appraisal.
Hey.
Yeah.
Appraisal.
Appraisal, it's got Paul's favourite word in it.
Appraisal.
And this is not what it's finally going to look like, it's a bit small, but it's an example of the user interface. There was a grounding, the MIMarEST grounding, I think, which the MIIB talked about, and one of the reasons in the grounding was that the passage plan had not been seen or approved by the master, and lack of accurate and correct scale data on board. They were two of the main causes. So something like MIRA will avoid both of those. It will give a check, a reassurance check on the passage plan, and it will also give you the information on the data that you need to make sure you can't have any gaps. So to give you an example of how it works. So here we have the onboard client, if you like. You will go through and enter your vessel data. You only need to do this the first time. You can put your voyage data in, so this one's Hamburg to New York, and departure and destination ports. Then you will complete all the vessel data, so is it your loading state, the safety contours, safety depth, whether you want it weather optimized, whether you want it fuel optimized, whether you want a one-time voyage plan, which is something that charterers have expressed a lot of interest in, or whether you want an en route voyage plan which can be updated as you're sailing. So all of this information is input by the vessel, by the master, by the crew, and then you will plan your waypoints. So you will use our voyage planning tool to plan your waypoints, and then once you've done that, then you will have you will send the request to our server, and then we will send you back a passage plan, or the beginnings of the passage plan. Nothing groundbreaking, but what is quite interesting and what is more groundbreaking is the way in which we're delivering it. And in that passage plan, we are telling you what data you need for that voyage. We are telling you the T's and P's that are applied in your CIO Plus layer. We are telling you the publications that you need, and the route has been checked against official charts on an ECDIS route network. So it's already a safe navigable route. A lot of the planning tools that are out there today, you can plan a route in them, you can order some data, but you cannot use that route for navigation. The master then, once he gets our passage plan, this is an example, it will be able to be customized to your shipping company's needs, if you like. Has all the voyage data in there, all your waypoint information. But what I wanted to show you down here, it says your needed ECDIS charts. So it tells you all the charts and whether they're currently licensed or not. It tells you the publications and whether they're currently licensed or not, and your TMP and nav area warnings which are applicable. So all of that information is sent to the master, and then when he gets to the point where he will accept or reject that voyage plan, then if he accepts it, all that data will be licensed automatically and he'll be ready to go. But it's not a complete voyage plan. It's an appraisal and a safe base to start from, and the liability is still the same. It's still with the master. He still needs to check it, but it's kind of had that four eyes principle. So we have done it. It's gone against the ECDIS route network. The master is still having to look at it and build on it and make a more comprehensive voyage plan out of it. But what is, as I say, what is quite interesting and avoids two of the most common issues at the moment is a complete data set and a passage plan that's checked and double checked. So this is where we are coming from with MIRA, which is quite a different concept. It kind of flips everything on its head.
And I see that as a very useful appraisal tool, use that word again, because it's such a quick and easy way in which you get all the charts, all the T's and P's, all the nav areas, all the publications. You compare that to the little stopwatch and get a second officer running around, getting all the books, putting them on there, putting all the little bits of yellow post-it notes in here and photocopying bits and pieces. It's the appraisal. So that's it. I would say you do that, you send it off, get my appraisal back, thank you very much, and then the second officer or navigating officer would then adjust and move things around and get it exactly how he wants, all the waypoints, that's because that's part of the planning, that's fantastic. And then when you're happy with that, send it off again, back comes an email within however long it takes, and that's then my ready for approval from the master stage. I present that to the master. The master, well, you need to move this here and move that there because of this usual things. Okay, we can do that. And then the final stage, that's the approval. So it's pinging it back and forth. But you're not sending it to MM and thinking, oh, I've got to do all that again and work it through. It's automatic systems, which is data management. Okay.
Are there any more questions at this point? I'll try the video again in a minute, but before I do, and then we just got one more topic.
Can I?
Yeah.
When you say master is responsible for, thanks, master is responsible for passage planning, but in the appraisal you give so much of information, he's going to obviously rely on it in terms of TNP notices and all.
Yep.
So where is the question of liability and with whom it lies then?
Master, always will be. So it's the same as, you know, the master approving it, but it's back to that risk. So I got so much data which is available to me, and there's going to be more and more and more as publications get more digitized. You know, that the concept that the master will physically check every piece, every parcel of digital data is not going to happen.
Right.
So you've got to go back to what we were talking about earlier about having reliable systems, ones you can check and ones you can monitor. But if you've got a system like that, and I was master on board, then I say, okay, well, let's just check that TMP. And unfortunately, the video's off. But there you'll be able to click on it, and it would show you the TMP notice, and you could show where it's come from. And if you wanted to, you could pull it up on the internet and cross-reference it. So you would sample items and go through it. That's how you would manage it. But the risk of human error is significantly less if you've got a system which can draw all that available data to you in a usable appraisal format. So it is simply that. It is simply big data being compressed down, filtered down to something you can use.
Paul, as you mentioned, master is going to rely on some of the data which is coming in. So that's where my question is about liability. When he's relying on those small,
and
it's a big data.
It's a big data, and that's where we've got. That's a big part of what we've got to go to. So we've got to have these people who are supplying that. We've got to understand what they're doing. They've got to understand what we're doing. We've got to and that's working together. I think that's really the next topic. Really, is support.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it's a safe base to work from. So today they're relying on the data being sent to them. Yes, they're requesting that data, but sometimes they're requesting the wrong data or not enough data. So at least they were having all the data here that they need as a safe base, and then they can build on that. They can request it. They can build on that and add extra things into it. But it's not going to be a complete passage plan done in his pocket. It's something for him to start from.
I have a question here. Can I just rephrase Captain Karkanis' email in terms of liability? usual way is that, you're relying on systems in your offices, which you all send to the ships in terms of correction. What if a ship runs aground on a sounding which actually is incorrect information from your end? We all learned garbage in, garbage out when we started computers. So in terms of liability, if you have a ship which has become a wreck and it's found, it's a speculative question, but it's the electronic chart gave incorrect data. So then where do we stand in terms of liability? It's all to do with the ship owner, the master, or it's going to be coming to the providers who are doing all this ashore?
I mean, to be clear, we're not creating this data. We're putting all the data together and distributing it to you. So we are making sure that we are using the official data from the hydrographic offices, and we are filtering through all of this big data which is coming on and providing extra information to the mariner in form of these layers. So the official hydrographic office charts are still the base of this, and they have to be used. And if the ENC is wrong in the chart, then the same case it is today, is it's wrong in the paper chart, who is liable. So we're not making this information from scratch, we're not recreating it, we're not allowed to, we're simply adding value and redistributing it. So from that perspective, the liability is
there is no human error chance on your end.
It's not done by human error. So we're taking that data, the algorithm is looking at the route, it's comparing it against the ECDIS network, it's giving that route, okay, based on that information and the official ENCs, that is a navigable route. The master still has to load it into his ECDIS, check that he has everything, go through his appraisal process.
What happens during passage during Suez Canal? The system will work?
Oh, sorry, 3 questions at the same time. Yes?
During passage through Suez Canal, the system work or you switch it off?
It depends on the pilot.
Depends on, yeah.
It's a plan, so you're not using it, the MIRA system you're not using whilst you're navigating, it's done in the planning stages of the voyage. And then if you're having an en route, we had a customer the other day who's doing our sea trials who wanted to say, okay, I want to know along MIRA where I should do my tank cleaning. So if I stop it at that point, I then need to submit the voyage planning criteria again and get a revised passage plan because it's en route and it's going to change. So he needs to incorporate that. So you're not navigating on the MIRA system, it's done as a part of your planning process.
It's just the appraisal. So it's the same as going to the Amazon, the Orinoco or whatever else. You wouldn't be relying on that system, it all changes anyway. Immingham, it's the same, so it's all local knowledge. So it is just an appraisal tool which gathers together official data in a usable format without any human interface. It is digital. It is filtering the data down so you can use it in a simple and easier way. But on board the ship, you can go back to say, where does this come from? And I can trace that back and I can see the original source, no problem. I can demonstrate that to an auditor, no problem. So it is not in any way taking away the responsibility or the competence of the bridge team. It is just adding to efficiency.
From a mariner's perspective, I wanted to know if there is an attempt to standardize the size of the display.
Size of the ECDIS display?
Absolutely.
Not that I've heard of in any of the working groups. I think Stephen will add to it in a minute. But we have a 24-inch ECDIS display for retrofit purposes. It fits nicely into old 19 and 23-inch gaps. We always get asked for, can we have a bigger screen? Can we have a bigger display? Essentially, you can have a display any size you like, but then you have to have the type approval, and then the cost will rise. So we have a lot of customers who want to have 50-inch chart tables on their, an ECDIS screen on its side to be able to write on and use like they did for a paper chart. But in that case, it wouldn't be type approved. But for standardisation of the screen size, it's not something that I think I've been involved in. But did you want to add, Stephen?
Yeah.
Stephen's our CEO, by the way, hiding at the back.
The size of the display is limited by the quality of the software, the resolution of the software. So as 4K software gets developed, displays will get type approved as get bigger. At the moment, with any software on the market, I have not seen ECDIS 4K resolution software. We've just finished developing it. It would not pass type approval on a larger display than what we're currently using. 27, I think, is about the biggest that gets above So what you will see is 4K software allowing you to go to 32-inch, 40-inch displays, but as Emma pointed out, those will not be cheap.
I think we have a 32-inch display in our office at the moment, 4K.
There's so much information pushed onto a very small screen.
Yeah.
That itself is
There is. The standard says 19-inch, that is the smallest allowed. But I think if anyone here has used a 19-inch display, no, that is very small. Yeah.
Because the huge portion gets used up for shopping, which on the marina, specifically from a master's perspective, when you're making an approach, you're not interested in that.
Yeah,
I
so
think-
I'll gladly show you our software afterwards, which removes all of that from the display. And you can remove absolutely everything and only have the chart on a 24-inch display. And then I'll gladly talk to you about how 4K software will allow us to go to much bigger screens. And we actually have just finished the type approval for a 32-inch display with 4K software. So yes, we can go down that route.
I think we need to cover some of the questions when we get back outside, just because of time, as we're moving on towards that as such. So we want to.
We'll just do the final topic, and then if we've got any more questions, let's say we can take them at the end or in the...
Support, very important, and I always like to say that if anyone recognises that gentleman there, that's David Cameron. That's where he ended up after he made a mess of the Brexit side of things. Not really. But support, very quickly and simply, is, as we've seen, we've got to have a good support team from the shore side. So they've got to be a part, they've got to be easy to understand their systems, but the key part really is that bottom line is that your support system, the people who are supporting you, they should be the ones who are filtering out this information so that you're getting the required information in usable format. If we enter this digital world which we're heading towards now, there will be just so much data fired at you, it won't be able to manage it. And that's the modern world we're dealing with. So how are we going to have a system which we're working with? Who's going to support me with that? Who's going to manage that? Who's going to give me a workable solution as we move towards these higher standards?
So obviously we have a fantastic 24/7 support team, and we do our best, and obviously we can always do better, but we do have KPIs, and the thing about us as a digital an ECDIS company and digital navigation company is that is what we do 100%. So it's not part of a bigger integrated bridge, this is what we do 100%. So for us to take feedback from customers and say implement it in the next software version, or look at improving continued professional development, for example, these things are something we can do relatively easily. So the support we get, the feedback we get from our customers and the support database that our team are building up is really important. It informs us whether we need to do better user guides, better starter kits, and new features in our software. All of that information comes from our users and from our customers, and our support team do a great job in feeding that back and giving that to our technical development team. Something else that we also have is, which we got asked for by a customer recently to help with their ISO audit. We have all the information that your vessels are bringing in. So this is an example of the our top 20 customers with all the support cases that we get and what they're related to. And this prompts regular reviews on shore between us and our customers, looks at different issues, helps you identify training needs of your crew. If you've got 20 vessels in your fleet and 19 of them are asking the same questions all the time, this could either be a fault of our particular user guide, or it could be that a training issue on across your crew. So these types of things we can work with you on, and that's where we go with our support service, which is part of these monthly fees. So support is important to us, and as I say, we're charging you a monthly service, so we want to do our best we can to give you a good support service. Now, I will quickly see if the video works one more time, and if not, I'll try and get it set up out there afterwards.
Yep.
Just because it's so good, we talked about it so much. Same spot. Okay. I'll send a link round to everybody that's here today anyway, so you'll be able to have a look at it. But we'll see if we can get it on the screen afterwards.
What is fantastic with the ChartWorld system is whenever you do your T&P updates, you get that music. I think it's great on the bridge. Have different music, different ringtones for different operations. Isn't that great? Whole new future there.
Anyway, so at this point, should we take any more questions now, or should we do them in the coffee break, or canapé and drinks break afterwards? Okay, go on then, one more.
Hello. This MIRA thing is chargeable on a monthly basis or as per the voyage additionally?
Per voyage initially. We're still working that bit out, to be perfectly honest. But yes, no, per voyage.
Good.
Any numbers?
No. not yet.
My question on the source of T&Ps.
Yes.
As we know, most of the HOs, local hydrographic offices, they are not giving you the T&Ps. Then how we can rely on the ECDIS and approach in those countries?
So the T&P world is a confusing one. Try and explain it simply. Some hydrographic offices include temporary and preliminary notices in their ENCs. So this could be something like a dredging area or change of a traffic separation scheme temporarily, for example. So some hydrographic offices include that information in their ENCs and they're updated automatically. Others, like the Admiralty, they issue T&P notices, which you're then supposed to manually plot on your ECDIS, and others don't really do anything. So what we have tried to do is we're taking the BA T's and P's and plotting them in a user chart layer, and we're also adding in a lot of the local ones. So for example, Chinese T&Ps are included in the layer, Denmark T's and P's. So there's a list produced by the Admiralty of the ones that include them and the ones that don't. So the ones that don't, we are incorporating into the CIO Plus layer. So at least you have all that information in one place.
And it's
Will the weather conditions be incorporated in MIRA?
Yes. We are working with a company called Meteor Group, SPOS, but if you have another weather provider, we have APIs for at least 5 or 6 different ones at the moment, which we can activate. So any weather provider that you're using, or failing that, automatically we're integrating SPOS for Meteor Group.
Companies SMS and master standing orders incorporated in that?
Companies SMS we taking into account. Master standing orders, not sure. I'll have to find out for you on that one.
good.
Okay.
It's nice to have an audience that stayed for the second half. Normally, the first one, normally people who are left by that stage. But that's great. Thank you very much.
No, thank you all for your attention. I hope you can join us afterwards.
If I had to give a title to this presentation, it would be From Celestial to Digital Navigation. Yeah, as we saw today, starting off with the Sextant. I think it was entirely engaging. Thank you very much, Emma and Paul, really for a fantastic presentation. I think we all owe them a bit of appreciation with a round of applause. Of course, we would also show our appreciation in a tangible way. At the IMarEST, like it is all over the world, and Dubai is probably a prime example. Whatever we do it free of charge. We do everything voluntarily, and we have supporters such as ChartWorld for sponsoring the evening today. Thank you very much, ChartWorld. We also have a company called Gulf Turbo, and I'd like to have Iswaran come up here. Gulf Turbo sponsors these bespoke tokens of our appreciation. So I call upon the director, Mr. Iswaran, who's been very kind enough to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Hey.
Paul, thank you very much.
Oh, I get one as well.
You sure do. You deserve every bit of it.
Thank you very much.